There is a battle going on. It's a huge battle. The battle's taking place in Los Angeles, California. It is a battle between the rich and the super rich. Investors are buying up property in prestigious suburbs like Bel Air and Beverly Hills. And they are tearing down 10,000 square foot homes and building 40,000 square foot homes. These are the super homes for the super rich. Mohammed Hadid would be one of the contractors building these 40,000 square foot homes. Recently, an interview was conducted with Mohammed Hadid, and the interviewer asked him, "Why do you build such big homes?" Mohammed Hadid said, "Because there's a need. There's a need for 40,000 square foot homes." Now, I don't know about you, but when I think of the words need and 40,000 square foot homes, that just doesn't quite compute. In fact, I would argue that need and 40,000 square foot homes should never be used in the same sentence. Folks, it's not need. You understand that? It's not need at all. It's called what? Greed. Greed. We're in this sermon series, aren't we, right? In the book of Ecclesiastes, this 12-chapter book that apparently King Solomon, in all his splendor, that same King Solomon, wrote at the end of his life. Solomon is reflecting upon all of the changes and chances in life, and he uses the phrase, chasing the wind, 9 different times. So that's why we're calling this sermon series, Chasing the Wind. It's as though throughout these 12 chapters, Solomon is on a hunt. He's searching, he's chasing, he's after something, right? You may recall about a month ago in chapter 1, Solomon was searching for meaning. And then chapter 2, we had a sermon on that, Solomon's search for satisfaction. A few weeks ago, chapter 3, Solomon's search for perspective. Last week, chapter 4, Solomon's search for friendship. And here we are in the 5th week of the sermon series, chapter 5, and we come across Solomon's desperate search for contentment. Contentment. We know what that looks like. We know what that feels like. I just want to be content. As Solomon says in Ecclesiastes 5, that every time he goes chasing contentment, there is a huge barrier. There is a huge, ugly monster every single time. Folks, it's not need. What's the monster today? It's called greed. To simplify things today, there are exactly 3 things I want to say about greed. First, we want to look at the system. The system that is really geared toward greed. And then we're going to look at the sickness that greed causes in our lives. Spiritually, emotionally, relationally, and then we will look at the solution. So you got it? The system, the sickness. Thank God there's a solution to this ugly, mean monster called greed. So let's get started. The system, your system, my system, every system is geared, is wired toward greed. This is how Solomon begins this discussion in chapter 5 of Ecclesiastes. If you see the poor oppressed in a district and justice and rights denied, do not be surprised at such things, for one official is eyed by a higher one, and over them both are others higher still. The increase from the land is taken by all. The king himself profits from the fields. Now, I hate to be the harbinger of bad news today, and this may come as a great surprise to all of you, but every economic system is geared toward greed. Pick your economic system: Jeffersonian democracy, socialism, communism. Just look at the pages of history. Every economic system invented by people is geared toward greed. How so? In every economic system, the posh and the powerful line their pockets by exploiting the peons, the poor, and all the peasants. How so? Surprise, surprise. Solomon says that even the king himself at the top of the hill, he is profiting from the fields. I like the way the New Living Translation picks up Ecclesiastes 5 verse 9. Even the king milks the land for his own profit. Truth is, all the movers and shakers in this system are milking the land for their profit. Now, why doesn't someone do something about the system? Because that would ruin the system. People who are working the system take bribes, confiscate land, and extort money. Now, when you look at Solomon's description of the economic realities of his day, you might think about Ecclesiastes 1 verse 9. What's that? There's nothing new under the sun. This is still the economic system that we're stuck in. This is the air we breathe. This is the DNA. We can't avoid being in a system that encourages, fosters, and propels us toward greed. That's the first point. That's the system. Every economic system is geared toward greed. And you know, every economic system then makes people sick. It really does. And we're all infected, some more than others, but we are all infected by the sickness, this spiritual, emotional, relational sickness that's caused by greed. Solomon's going to go on. He says that greed creates an unattainable goal. In verse 10 of Ecclesiastes 5, whoever loves money never has money enough. Whoever loves wealth is never content. Remember, that's what he's chasing, contentment. Never content with his income. This too is meaningless. Remember, we've looked at this word every week in this sermon series. A transliterated Hebrew is hevel. Here in the New International Version, hevel is rendered meaningless. In other versions, it's rendered a vanity, vapor midst. It's a dead end. There's no way around it. It's absolutely meaningless. And Solomon says, if money is number one in my heart, that guarantees a meaningless life. Now think about it. In our search for contentment, our desperate search for contentment, greed will never, ever help us find contentment. And why is that? What one word defines greed? M-O-R-E. You know that, right? More. More money. More wealth. More stuff, more possessions, more vacations, more fun, more. That's the sick system we're in. And Solomon says that greed creates an unattainable goal. Because if your goal is more, you'll never make it. And you will drive yourself and people you love absolutely insane. Someone once asked Howard Hughes, he was the Donald Trump of his day, Howard Hughes, how much money? That's a good question. How much is enough? You know what Howard Hughes said? Classic line. Just a little bit more. It's an unattainable goal. The Boston College Center for Wealth and Philanthropy recently did a study on the super rich, defined as people who have, on average, $78 million worth of assets. Now, for most of us, that would mean full financial security. But here's what just amazes me. On average, these people were $78 million said that they needed, on average, an additional $21 million to be fully financially secure. Now, I don't know if you can relate with that, but that's the problem of greed. It doesn't matter how much I have. I will always want more. It's sick, folks. It's really sick. So greed creates an unattainable goal. Second in this section, as we follow Solomon, he says greed produces terrible anxiety. In the next verse, he says, the sleep of a laborer is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of a rich man permits him no sleep. Now, we might have a certain amount of sympathy for the working person, right? The union laborer, you know, most of us, the working stiffs of life, right? We have a certain sympathy for people who are exploited, right, by the posh and powerful who are lining their pockets against the peons, the poor and the peasants. We have a certain sympathy for these poor people. Solomon doesn't. Solomon says that the sleep of a laborer is sweet. They're relaxed. They're content. They have sweet sleep. There's peace in these people's lives, Solomon says. But for the rich person, at least in this text, Solomon says the abundance of a rich man permits him no sleep. The rich person, at least in this text, is constantly tossing and turning all night. What if my investments go belly up? What if that next deal doesn't go through? What if there's another great recession? You see, for the rich person in this text, money is life. And if I lose my money, I lose my life literally. That's why Solomon says it produces terrible anxiety. Terrible anxiety. On the other hand, right, the others, Solomon says their sleep is sweet. Solomon says whether they eat much or little, it's silly, no big deal finally. Because you see, for the others in this verse, life at its core is not about more. Third, sickness that greed creates and produces, Solomon says, massive problems, massive problems. He goes on, as we simply just work our way through Ecclesiastes 5. Solomon says, I've seen a grievous evil under the sun, wealth hoarded to the harm of its owner. Now, I don't know if you know the great rapper, Notorious B.I.G., but Notorious B.I.G. raps out a song where he says, mo money, mo problems. That's it. That's what Solomon is saying. If we don't watch it, mo money, mo problems. Greed creates massive problems. And notice this is not wealth or money in and of itself. See, that's neutral. Solomon's after the big ugly monster called greed. Jack Whitaker, maybe you heard about him. Jack Whitaker in 2002 won a lottery worth $314 million. When Uncle Sam took his part, Jack was left with $83 million. Jack Whitaker was generous. He gave millions away. He even bought a car and a house for the woman who sold him the winning lottery ticket. But then Jack Whitaker's life began to unravel. Thieves broke into his car and stole $500,000 in cash. Now, why anyone would have $500,000 in cash in their car, I don't know. But Jack did, and they took it. Then a young man died of a drug overdose in Jack's home. Right after that, Jack's granddaughter was declared missing. Soon after that, she was found dead. Jack Whitaker was arrested for driving under the influence. He was sued by a casino for bouncing checks in the total of $1.5 million. And then Jack Whitaker got divorced. What's he doing today? What will Jack Whitaker do this week? He will oversee 2 small, struggling businesses. And if this week holds like last week, Jack Whitaker will spend $600 this week on what? Just guess. Lottery tickets. Because you see, he's going to win it again. Greed creates massive problems. People are attracted to money as moths are attracted to a flame. If you have a lot of money, the government will notice, charities will notice, and you can bet your bottom dollar your relatives will notice. You're going to have to hire accountants to pay your taxes, brokers to make your investments, gardeners to fix up your lawn, and maids to keep your home neat and tidy. You're going to have to pay a ton of money to a ton of people to keep your ton of money. No wonder Solomon puts it this way. All his days, this is the greedy rich person we're talking about. All his days, he eats in darkness with great frustration, affliction, and anger. The great St. Francis of Assisi, whose dates are up there, 1181 to 1228 AD, puts it classically in these terms. Riches prick us with 1,000 troubles in getting them, as many cares in preserving them, and yet more anxiety in spending them, and with grief in losing them. That's the sickness brought about in small part by the system, brought about in large part because of my greed. There is a solution. There's a solution. God doesn't leave us just hanging this morning. The solution given by God. Solomon goes on. Then I realized that it's good and proper for a man to eat and drink, here it is, find contentment. He actually found it in his toilsome labor under the sun. During the few days of life God has given him, for this is his lot. Moreover, when God gives any man wealth and possessions, enables him to enjoy them, they can be enjoyed, to accept his lot, be happy in his work. This is a gift of God. See, if you're anything like me, and you struggle with greed, you think, if I can just stop wanting. Or you say, if I can just get everything I want. Get it? I'll stop wanting. Or I'll get everything I want. Those are dead ends. Neither works. Because I'll never stop wanting, and I'll never get what I really want. At the heart of greed is a misperception of God, of our God, the only God. We think that God doesn't give. We think that we're paupers and poor. We think that God pinches nickels and dimes. Oh, no, look at these three words that I've highlighted. Solomon says God has given. God gives. This is a gift. God gives and gives and gives. If I'm going to conquer greed, I need a new perspective on who this God is. What are we saying here? There are really two voices out there, and only two. Greed says, get more. Oh, just get more. Get sick in the system. God says, I give. I give. That's the other voice we can listen to today. I give and give and give. God delights in giving. Climactically, he gives Jesus to seek and save lost people. He gives Jesus who demonstrates grace that is still amazing. God gives Jesus on the cross for the forgiveness of every sin, direction every turn, light for every dark day, and an anchor for every deadly storm. Oh, God gives and gives and gives. You know 3:16. God so loved the world that he what? Gave. David looks at this in Psalm 23. And he says, my cup is half empty, right? My cup just has a couple of drops. No, you know that. David looks and listens to the giving God, and he says, my cup runneth over. Money and wealth will never do that. They can't. They won't. Ever. So let me summarize Ecclesiastes 5. In 9 words, 9 words. 9 of the most famous words in the English language. It's funny because in the original Hebrew, it's just 4 words. Yahweh, Ro'i, Lo, Exar. But in the English, these 9 words break the iron grip of greed and set our hearts free. You ready for these 9 words? You ready to trust them? To live with them? To believe them? To die with them? Here they are. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Let me say those 9 words again. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Goodbye, greed. Hallelujah. God in Jesus supplies and gives everything we will ever need. How about we stand and sing about it?